It all starts from the moment the guy looks at the woman and admires her incredible beauty. The prince begins to say that his girl is too beautiful. Even the gods from ancient legends cannot compare with the beauty of the girl. The heroine likes such kind words, so she admits that she always loved the duke named Siegfried. After such words, Siegfried takes the girl's hand, and he is glad that he got to attract her attention. But he is still not satisfied because other men can look at the beauty of his wife. Every time the guy sees the views of other men, the duke begins to imagine how he kills his sword, the men who dare to look at his duchess. After thought, Siegfried takes the heroine by the neck and even begins to consider his thoughts funny, because the head of the knights, the defender of the kingdom, cannot make the duchess in his own way. After the words and thoughts of the man, the system appears in front of the heroine. She chooses a task to always follow the duke of what it would not cost it. As soon as the girl took the task, she began to claim that the man found a way to make a duchess only him, and at this time, the heroine will only follow the knight and will not look at the other man. Siegfried rejoiced in the girl's words, at which time the system also wrote that the knight trusts the heroine for 100%, but only the man gets a bottle with herbs and asks for the heroine to drink the potion so that they be forever. In her thoughts, the girl tells herself that she will never drink the potion that is offered by the duke, but in fact, she just agrees with the conditions of the boy. After the heroine's consent, Siegfried passes her potion through a kiss. This time, the heroine thought there was no happy end for the fifth character, Siegfried. All the events that happened to the heroine is not more than the game that everyone was waiting for, called Presserep in the Cage. The game also promised a good graphics, also 5 very beautiful characters, which was prescribed by the creator of the game in the smallest details. But the game failed at the very beginning of the issue. Because of a very cruel plot, limbs could not be called happy. Only the main problem of the game was endless system problems. Playing where the dialogues of the characters always go, there is no progress of the game. No one wanted to play an unfinished project except one player. Jo Yeon, despite all the problems of the game, still very much wanted to go through her for all possible happy or even not very limbs. But when the heroine began to start the game, she did not work. She was upset from such a failure, because she planned to play the game all night today. But the creator of the game cannot repair her project, which is what players suffer. As soon as Ju Yeon fell asleep on a bed from the computer, monitor began to break out very bright light, with the inscription, "The game is successfully ready for launch." Then the girl woke up. Ju Yeon was very angry because she remembered what Siegfried did. Siegfried seemed to be the most kind of the characters. The heroine hoped for him, but only the man poisoned the girl. She had drank all the poison herself. The knight did not even taste the cap. After Ju Yeon got into the game, she made many attempts to get back to real life again. Only the main characters of the game are real psychic. They killed the girl hundreds of times. The heroine very much wanted to pass at least one limb, but everything was in vain. Because of a lot of attempts, the girl still managed to go through all the limbs, although not even a good story. But she does not understand why she is still in the middle of the game after passing. Ju! Yeon thought if she was killed by a last character, she had to get into a reality, whether the heroine was stuck in the game forever and should be endlessly die. After negative thoughts, a system appeared before the Duchess, which reported that all male characters were passed. Additional game mode was launched. Now, Ju Yeon can pass a real game, but only the girl is outraged because this was not the case. In the rules of the game is some kind of secret limb, but if the heroine completes the real limb of the game, she will probably be able to get back into the real world. After such thoughts, Ju Yeon was very happy and asked that the system quickly launches the secret limb of the game and let him know that it is for the secret character of which you need to go. The game began, but the system did not tell the girl who the main character in the limb. After a couple of minutes of silence, the system reported that the main character is the mistress, Praship. Dirty clothes suddenly became clean and beautiful. Even the hair began to glow. A very familiar voice was heard by the heroine. The game began again from the first level, from the first character. The maid entered the room and asked if the hostess Praship was ready. From such a turn of events, the girl was very angry, but did not show her emotions, but only asked what Ella needed. Ella reports that Emperor Dietrich ordered the girl to be brought to his room. Dietrich Emperor to reign, the most cruel in the kingdom of Ataloy. The emperor is the first character of which had to pass, At the beginning of the game, Dietrich closed the heroine high in the tower, which was called Precipi. At this time, the maid was outraged that the girl would be going to quickly gather, because the emperor would cry again on Ella, all because of the incompetence of the heroine. Ju Yan looks at the answers that the system gives and understands that it has no choice, because the first and third variant of refusal will only lead to death and bad limb, so there are not many options. However, the heroine came to the emperor and greeted how it belongs to the imperial family. But Dietrich only laughed at such a greeting because the girl got rid of the rank of empress, but lives in the castle, so she has not forgotten the behavior of the imperial family. Ju Yeon thinks that the guy once brought the girl himself to the castle, and now he is unhappy with something. But if the emperor does not want to see the heroine so much, so he would better throw her out of his castle. But the emperor cannot throw away the heroine, because he is very sensitive and closed in himself the prince, though the true heir. But the second son of the emperor received more love from his father than Dietrich. When the empress died of a deadly Dietrich disease was left alone. On that day, a little emperor appeared Precipe, born from a woman of low origin, a princess who has never received the attention of the emperor. Two people suffering from loneliness very soon found common interests. So very quickly, Precipe became the closest person for Emperor Dietrich. But when it turned out that Precipe was not kinged, blood expelled from the castle. At that time, the little emperor did not even have time to say goodbye to his closest person. This disappearance struck Dietrich very much. He thought that the heroine had not even said goodbye to another prince, whether the girl also left him as all other people. Such thoughts pursued the emperor. After the coup of Dietrich killed the second prince and his people, the first thing the guy did when the throne did, the emperor sent his knights to find the heroine and turn her back to the castle. When the girl appeared in the Dietrich castle, he ordered the heroine to be fused in the tower and no one to the tower without the emperor's permission. This is called love and hatred. And how much do not explain about understanding with another prince, the emperor does not want to hear anything. Ju Yeon tried to explain everything when talking, but nothing happened. Before the main characters of the game, the body of the heroine simply freezes and does not move. It is also possible to say only the phrases that the game system allows. The emperor shouts that our heroine is simply not capable of anything. Above the guy, he writes the level of passing 0. Then the heroine decides which phrase to choose from the system. Earlier, the girl always chose the first option, but now you need to change something. Then Ju-yeon decides to choose the third answer. The girl looks at the third option, but the fourth is not expected. And she is shocked because the fourth version is very cruel to answer. Even there is a swearing. But Ju-yeon chooses the third answer, so he says that the emperor now unhealthy voice, which is the guy shocked. The heroine also says that as a child, the emperor very often ill in the present season. Let the emperor forgive the girl for her experience. Only after such words, Dietrich quickly rises from her throne, approaching the heroine, and just begins to pull for her beautiful hair. The guy does not understand how a girl who left him many years ago can be worried about him. The emperor called the girl that he did not believe in any word of the heroine, but still the percentage of the passage increased by 5 points. Ju-yeon was surprised that she was given 5 points. She had never chosen the third option before she was afraid to die. The prince looks at the girl and claims that she just left him, and now she wants to trust again in the prince. Such cheap experiences. Then Dietrich says that tomorrow will take place the day of his coronation. From such news, the heroine is very shocking. Because this is the main event of the game, the coronation will be 3 main characters. The prince also says that at the coronation will be people who know the girl, so it is better to come to the crowning. Therefore, what solution the heroine will make? When Ju-yeon wanted to choose again, 3 ways of answering, she noticed that the fourth option appeared again. The points are given for the first or second answer. But Dietrich wants to get the heroine and keep it in the tower. He will probably not be glad to see the girl at his coronation. Ju-yeon thinks that the fourth answer is death, so she chooses the first option where he wants to go to the princess's coronation. Therefore, the girl asks for the emperor to allow her to be at the coronation. Dietrich is not expected to allow the heroine to go to the coronation because she also needs to communicate with other people except the prince. This answer is very shocking the girl. The result of the choice has changed. From last time, in the usual mode of the game, the prince expelled the heroine without thought. Then, before Ju-yeon, a system appears again. When you pass the game, after a secret limb, you can find out answers and modes that were not available in a regular game. The girl reads the window and does not even listen to the prince, who claims that the heroine will not be able to change anything in her life. When Ju Yeon left the prince's room, she does not understand what happens, why the fourth answer appeared in the system. Is the plot of the game to change? But if the prince's answers have changed, it means that all other characters have probably changed. The girl was greeted by one main character of 6. The Duke North Noi Davin is a cruel man. He has always resorted to people as toys. In the past game, Noi closed the heroine in the warehouse under the collection offer, but when he was bored with all the guy, he just left the girl in the warehouse. Great wizard Persepa even. For a girl to be dependent on Ivan, a man used various manipulations with a mind on the heroine. Therefore, the heroine is most afraid of the magician Ivan, Siegfried Knight's commander. Once Ju-yun thought he was one of the smartest characters, but she was wrong. Also the last character in the Atar game, Prince of the Nearest Teen Empire. Atar is very liquid and beautiful hair color. The guy is very noble. When the girl, she walked along the corridor, she thought about the characters on the hall, not noticed how she fell. Ju Yeon noticed Atar. He suggested helping the heroine to climb. The heroine was shocked when she saw the prince in the Dietrich castle, and a 4-answer system appeared immediately with Atar. The girl does not understand why Atar appeared so early, and suddenly, because on the plot, the heroine and the prince should only meet on crowning. Is it all the mistake of the game? Atar took the girlfriend's heel and apologized to the heroine. As soon as Atar touched the legs of the girl, Ju Yeon began to remember the past game as a prince, rolled the girl in shackles. The heroine began to get very bad from such memories, so she decides to choose any answer only to stop memories related to the Atar prince. But when Ju Yeon wanted to make a choice, the system reported if the girl made the choice, then the whole game will start again. From such a message, the girl was shocked, because once there was no such function in the game. Due to a strong panic, the heroine chooses the 4th answer. After the 4th variant, Ju Yeon gets up to the prince and asks whether Atar himself is okay. Let him not take care of the heroine. Atar was shocked from the heroine's answer. He did not expect it. At this time, Ju Yeon was worried that because of her answer, she would soon die, why she chose the 4th answer. From the girl's answer, the prince looked with a cold look, and a new system appeared above him. The heroine was frightened by the new system over the Emperor Atar. At this time, the advisor of the prince reminded that they need to go to the meeting immediately. Only Atar asked that the advisor went himself and left the man of one with the heroine. When Atar asked the heroine, she answered that she did not know why such words broke out of her mouth. The emperor began to approach, then Ju Yeon thinks that she just chose the 4th answer. The girl began to justify herself before the emperor, but noticed that she could not talk. The heroine thought it was never. She could always talk to the main characters, even the system. But now she cannot talk. There is no answer system. Atar started asking the girl. Only the heroine before the prince decided to break her dress. After the dress was damaged, the girl noticed that the clothes were not restored, as in the game. Once the clothes were immediately repaired, but not now. Atar wants to take the Ju Yeon by the hand, because now it's better for a girl to go to her room. But as soon as the man touched the heroine's hands, she began to pick up her hand and scream. The girl began to leave the prince very quickly. She will be able to reach the room herself for forgiveness from the emperor for her bad behavior. After Ju Yeon left the prince, he wanted to get a girl to himself, and also came up with new abuse of her. But after such thoughts, he began to mention how he was already mocking the girl, who was very much like the main character. Atar could not understand where he had such thoughts at this time. At Atar, the Prince Dietrich watched. Already in her room, the girl thinks that her dress remains torn, but more because the girl chose the 4th variant of the answer went wrong. The system just stopped showing other options. Then, Ju Yeon thinks that, let the dress. Although 100 times torn the main thing that the system will store information about the passage. Once upon a time, the girl behaved very boldly because the system kept the process. Even if the game is over and the heroine will die, it will always be able to call the system and start from a last time. But now she cannot even be stored, as the girl did not scream, did not ask. The system simply refuses to keep the game. Only then does the system appear above the head of the heroine that reports that in the secret mode of storage is simply not available. From such a message, Ju Yeon was frightened by shock, because the system itself offers a choice, and now there is no road back. It is necessary to pass the limb of the game that the girl knows, and to repeat her thousands of times, or to risk life in search of a true main character of the game. Only Ju Yan does not even know the true hero of the game. She is not even given to any fairy tales. When the heroine was in a panic system suggested to activate a secret function, a mode of play, from which the girl was very surprised, because it was never before, although she passed all the characters. Ju! Yeon agreed to the secret function. Then a magazine of events appeared in front of her. The girl became interested in the magazine. It is a magazine where you can see the events of the usual regime, the system explained. The magazine also records new information about the characters of which the girl will meet in secret mode. Yeon thought if there are new characters in the magazine, so the magazine can show the main character of the game, so the girl asks for the system to show this character. Only the system reports that it is impossible to look at information about an unknown character. Such an answer is greatly known to the heroine, because the main function of the magazine simply does not work. The system also reports that a new feature has been added to view past memories, so a book of memories has been added to the inventory. Now the book can show information about the characters that the heroine wants to conquer. You can also get it for fairy tales. Yeon thinks if it is impossible to store, it still can now use the system in more detail. The girl wanted to look at the fairy tales about the main character, but the system asked for a password. The system also led the password that the password is the name of the main character, but only for a girl this junk is just not needed. The heroine thinks if the system cannot show anything, then let the book of memories open. Yeon thinks that you need to know the name somehow, but something noticed that it is very shocking. As soon as the book of memoirs opened, nothing happened, the book showed nothing. The system reported that the book of memories was sinning, but even after the gap, nothing happened to the girl that it was a mistake in the game itself. Therefore, the heroine asked to get a magazine of events. But as soon as the journal of events was played, it was shocked, because the magazine of events began to knock out a mistake, and all the letters simply began to get together. The magazine also began to grow up past events. The girl looks at the events and thinks that she has seen them hundreds of times in the past. Therefore, these memories of the heroine remember very well, but the characters of the characters do not show the magazine. Yan was scared why Atar's face is not showing the magazine. The girl began to ask the system to show other characters. Then the magazine showed all the characters, but only the face of Atar was not visible. The heroine does not know that Atar could not be seen, that it is not visible. This is all because the book of memories does not open. But now it is useless to think about this situation. It is better not to choose the fourth answer that the system offers. The day of crowning Emperor Dietrich has come. Yeon thinks that you need to find Atar. Then it is possible, and the main character of the game will appear. The girl begins to look at all people and does not notice the system. Then she thinks that probably the main character of the game did not come to Dietrich's crowning. The heroine drinks wine and thinks that there is no time left at all. Then she and the glass that kept glowing. This meant only one thing, that the next event would start. The girl went outside and began to mention that it was one of the most important events. Now she should meet with the heroes of the game. The first time the heroine will get acquainted with Atar in the garden and greet the uprise. When returned to the castle, the girl will also meet Noi. Then, on the order of Dietrich, the Siegfried character spends the heroine to the room. This event should end, so the Atar should appear soon, but whether the character will always appear. But only Atar appeared a completely different character, it was Noi. The girl greeted, but she did not understand why Noi appeared with what happened to Atar. But the character began a conversation for him, great respect to meet the heroine in the garden. Noi claims that he had a lot of questions about the heroine. This time, the girl thinks that the prince has beautiful hair and just a wonderful face. No wonder that all girls just lose their heads. To a better acquaintance with Noi, the heroine thought all other girls. But only then she learned the truth about the Count, that he was really a psychopath. The girl started a conversation with the Count. She is very surprised that Noi knows about the girl. The man states that the girl is very shy in the castle. There is no one that would not know the heroine. Noi is very fond of a wonderful and beautiful girl, immediately liked the graph. Is the girl really as good as everyone talks about her? And now, as the Earl met the girl in reality, now he believed in the rumors of people that the heroine is really just beautiful. Also, Noi asks if Ju Yeon went out to breathe fresh air, or can the Graf be offered to take a walk with him on the garden of the castle. Only the heroine did not have time to agree, because Prince Attar appeared and began to claim that he had to go for a walk with the girl. Attar approached Noi's hand and said that the prince himself can take care of the girl, so the Graf can go further on her business. But when Noi looked at the Attar with a cold look, the prince began to scream a lot, that as a Graf dare not to listen to the prince's orders. After the cry of Prince Noi began to say goodbye to the heroine, he will hope that soon they will be able to meet again, but without a prince. Scared Ju-yun thinks why the prince only appeared now? Attar started talking and says the girl just another noble woman. Also, people say that she lost the title of princess because of his mother's distrust. Therefore, Prince Attar has a lot of questions about the heroine. Attar began to ask whether he and the heroine were not familiar. The girl did not answer, but in the face of the heroine, the prince realized that he did not go crazy. They were really familiar. After the first meeting of the prince and the girl, Attar began to see memories how he was mocked by the heroine. At that moment, the man thought he just came down from his mind, but the memories could not be so real, so that these memories should be asked a girl. Attar began to ask what he saw the shackles who wanted to put on Ju-yeon, but why in the memoirs of the shackles were already put on the heroine, who the girl is in general. Yeon began to think about what the prince was talking about at all. It seemed like the memories of the past game were mentioned by the characters were a new problem of the game. Not only can the girl talk to the prince quietly, but the behavior and conversation of Attar has changed a lot. But the prince is not a character with his replicas. Now he is like a real person with his mind and behavior. From her thoughts, the heroine could not answer the question of the prince, so the man decided to force the girl to speak. A man thinks if he repeats everything in memories, maybe a girl will start talking. Attar got the shackles on what the heroine began to shout to stop and let go. Ju-yun began to reflect and hit the prince. Attar was just a lot of angry what a girl allows herself. But as soon as the prince looked at the heroine, she noticed that she was very scared and began to cry. Yeon quickly left the prince. Attar began to lift shackles and think that with the girl really something wrong. But there is a lot of time left to make the girl admit to her beloved methods. At this time, an unknown man approached the prince. The frightened heroine did not understand anything at all that now the prince began to behave so. Is the fourth choice of the system, released the character, so Attar began to mention everything. Then that will begin when all other characters begin to remember that if others have their mind, it will be a big problem, because the girl cannot even keep the game. Because of such events, everything can get out of the control of the game. The thoughts of the heroine interrupted strong shouts. Yeon heard someone shouting that Prince Attar was killed. The girl ran up to Attar and could not believe her eyes. Prince really was dead. The prince also came to the heroine. The man began to tell the guards to close all the doors and make a list of people who had already left the banquet home. Dietrich also asked what a girl is doing on the street. Let the girl answer the question of the prince, what she did on the street of the castle at all, and what she saw what happened to Attar. One of the knights claims that the heroine in severe shock, so she will answer the prince's questions in the government. Only Dietrich looked at the knight with a cold look and said that he now asked the heroine and not a knight. A couple of minutes before the prince, a man appeared and said that he could answer all the questions that Dietrich wanted to ask the heroine. Only Dietrich says that the Duke Fenrich is a little late. At this time, the girl began to think that he did not see the Duke. The man apologized for late. He simply investigated a very suspicious situation. As soon as Fenrich looked at the heroine, she was much scared. Fenrich claims that the knight is looking for Attar now. The Duke also thinks that it will be better if Dietrich himself meets the Attar guard, so that there is no panic. The Duke also believes that it is better not to show the knight of his prince in this condition. After the words Fenrich, Dietrich ordered the knight to lead the head of Siegfried's guards. The man also asks for the Duke Fenrich. He spent the heroine to her room in the tower. Let the man look if the girl entered his room, so that there are no problems. After the words of Prince Fenrich, he looked at the heroine and asked her to follow the Duke. The frightened heroine and the Duke went to the tower together. Fenrich asked that probably the girl is severely frightened by the murder of Attar. Probably it was a killer, because it is a holiday that is the perfect moment to make murder and escape from the place. But Attar is just the fourth prince, so he was far from crowning. The Tane Empire would not break the attitude because of some prince's murder. Everything will be decided very quietly, so let the girl not worry. Jo, Yeon looks at the Duke and thinks that probably from the secret character in the game, because the system does not give information about Fenrich. But is the Duke really not the main character? Because his appearance is very beautiful. The girl looked at the Duke and fell unnoticed. Only the Duke managed to catch the heroine, but asked if the girl was not injured. After asking her husband, the heroine was very surprised to be able to talk at her own way, and the system did not open options for the Duke's answers. Can you act quietly if it is not the main character of the game? When Ju-yeon replied that she was okay, the Duke was surprised that the girl was able to talk calmly. The girl asks whether she had never met the Duke before. The Duke thinks that he is now the closest man to His Majesty all the time. The Duke spent the battle in the fields, and that his girl may have never seen before. Ju-yeon thinks that Fenrich is probably a new character from the game, but the heroine is not going to pass the Dietrich plot again. Probably they will never meet a man again. Only the Duke interrupted the thoughts of the heroine and replied that she does not know much. In the future they will meet many more times. When the Duke led the girl in the room, he began to look out the window or all well. Already in the room, the girl is watching that the system reports that the character of the Atar disappeared, as if it had never been at all. The heroine also decided to try to find information about the Duke of Fenrich in the system. Only the system issued that such a character simply does not exist. Then Ju-yeon was very surprised why Fenrich was not a character. Then the heroine also tried to find information about the character of the maid. The information was confirmed that the Ella character she exists in the game, but then why there was no information about the Duke? Who in general Fenrich is, why there is no information about him? This is a great frightening girl. Also, Ju-yeon remembers the words of a man that they will meet many times in the future. Jo-yeon just started sinking because she does not know who the main character is and what is happening in the game in general, because there are many problems. When the heroine became bad from the information, she fainted. But when she woke up, then noticed her room, at first the girl thought it was all hallucinations or sleep. But as soon as she noticed the characters of the game on her monitor, then she realized that she really returned to real life. Jo-yeon switches off your computer and thinks that you just can't get into the game. Only when the heroine passed by the mirror did she notice that the character from the game. After the look of the mirror, the girl began to think whether she really is in real life. Really, her name is Ju-yeon, and not Presepe as in the game, who she is at all. As soon as the girl woke up from the screams, she noticed that she was in the game again, and it still was only a dream that she got into the real world again. Dietrich asked for the heroine to wake up sooner and wipe her tears. He needs to ask a couple of very important things. The prince states that Noe told the whole truth about Atar and the heroine that she was alone in the garden yesterday. The girl looks at the prince with an empty look and notices that the system offers 3 gold options. The system wants to force the heroine to choose at least one answer. When asked by a man, Ju-yeon replies that she went to the garden yesterday to breathe fresh air, but the heroine stopped Lord Noe and offered a conversation. But the conversation between the heroine and Lord interrupted Atar, which appeared very suddenly. So Atar ordered the Noah to leave the girl and went on his business. Also, Ju-yeon says Atar wanted to do very strange things with the heroine, so the girl hit the prince and fled. The angry prince asked more to tell in detail what he wanted to do and Atar with the heroine. The girl says that the shackles who were put on the prince, Atar himself wanted to put them on the heroine. But after the girl escaped, she only heard that Prince Atar died. She was very surprised, so she returned to check the cries. She told all the truth that became the day of the prince's death. After this conversation, the system reported that the level of trust in Dietrich changed. Ju-yeon noticed that the level of trust has changed. It would not be necessary to choose the answer for the character Dietrich. Will the prince return his memories and remember how he killed the heroine himself? But only the man was angry and ordered that the girl would tell the truth and did not dare to lie in his face. Dietrich went to the door and said that the heroine would not even think of making some fool prince again. Lord Noe will ask everything again and return to the girl. Also, when he leaving, the prince claims that he never thought that a girl could once hit a man at the face, especially considering that the heroine behaves in front of the prince as a regular doll. Jo-yeon does not understand what happened now, because it seemed like a prince now very much offended. Also, the girl thinks that she dreamed for a dream. She will really forget her real name. The girl remembers her memories of real life. All she can remember this as she started playing the game. And then the memories of real life are over. The heroine cannot mention anything even before the beginning of the game of memories. In the evening, the unexpected guest came to Lord Noy. The man did not expect his guest to go only to meet. Sudden Histum Noy was the Duke of Fenrich. Noy sits with the Duke and thinks that Fenrich came to the man's house just to find a jumper about the murder of Prince Attar. But it has been a couple of minutes, and the Duke just sits and drinks tea. Noy started talking. The man asked if the Duke liked the tea, because the tea was made of very rare tea leaves, which were brought only from the north. Only the Duke answers very carefully. He did not even think that he would like tea, because he never liked teas. Noy is very glad that Fenrich decided to try his tea, and so he saw a man heard a lot about the Duke. Fenrich put tea on the table. The man became very interesting that Lord heard such, because all people always talk about man only dirty things. The Duke looked at the Lord with a terrible look and asked what the man heard. Has Lord heard that the Duke of the bloodthirsty monster, who simply kills people in the fields of battle, or a person born with low rank, a person without respect for nobles and aristocrats, even a person who does not respect the imperial family, a person who, without any reflection, can kill even the emperor himself. In short, one can say that the Duke of Fenrich is a true monster. Only Noi states that all these rumors are simply evidence that the Duke is simply incredibly possessing his sword. The Duke interrupts Lord, because the man does not like empty conversations. It is better let them talk about the death of Prince Attar. Only Noi states that he told everything he knew. Lord met Attar in a garden on a banquet, and then immediately went on his business. But Fenrich does not believe the words of Lord, because he misses one very important thing. Did Noi seem that the heroine and the prince knew each other, but the girl did not often come out of the tower because she could get acquainted with the prince before. Noi thought because it is usually not his business, but there was a small conflict between them that day. Is a man to say that Ju Yan was involved in the murder of Prince Attar? Only Lord began to say immediately that it was wrong. It is clear that the prince's murder is just the case of the hands of a real killer. After the conversation, the Duke gets up at the table and thanks for the conversation. With the words of Lord Fenrich, learned a lot of information. The man also heard that Lord has a very good taste for works of art. That is why, not so long ago, the Duke began to be interested in works of art. And now he is looking for a person who can look a good look to find real works. The man also states that he does not often communicate with other aristocrats. But the Duke thought that talking to Noi can be a good opportunity. For a long time, a man is interested in Lord's view of true art. A man could not become a companion on the art for the Duke. A heavily shocked and frightened Lord thinks that there is probably some closed plan in the Duke's proposal. Most recently, the man worried that the Deven family is losing the place of the Emperor's main supervisors. And now the Duke of Fenrich is the closest face of the Emperor to approach her husband. Noi replies to the Duke that he is very pleased to hear such a proposal. But in the last days, the man was very tired of aristocrats and nobles, because none of them appreciate the true art. Noi also proposes to show the Duke his collection of works. Noi invites the Duke to a room with works, and says that there are sculptures that have created foreigners, paintings of unknown artists, very beautiful small jewelry, so the Lord collection is very expensive to the rare. The most expensive sculpture of a man is the monster taxidermia. Fenrich, with sadness on the face, corresponds that the sculpture is really very good for the collection. Also, a man is interested in Lord removes in such a large room on his own. But Noi replies that he has a maid, which he trusts to clean his valuable room. Only Lord still does not trust his maid, because no one knows when dirty hands can destroy the collection, so the man does not allow the maid to walk in the room when he is not nearby. In addition, Lord also gave the maids a couple of weekends, so a man will just enjoy his collection for a while. Fenrich asked in this case, if now something happens with her husband, then by tomorrow, no one knows anything. Such words were very frightened by Noi. It has no understanding at all about what it is now. But only the Duke smiles and says that he simply joked. With such valuable things that are in one room, a man needs to be careful, because many thickens in the last time. Noi agrees with the words of the Duke, but at this time the man is increasingly asking Lord about the monster's sculpture. Did Noi buy her at an auction? Lord replies that he only recently bought a sculpture. At this time, the Duke looks the room and sees, as in the past game, Lord just closed the heroine in the room for a few days, as she cried and asked to release her. Fenrich realized that he could not simply ignore such a situation. The second event in the game begins with one letter. After the coronation banquet were detained the past people of the past emperor, who's killed Dietrich. The emperor looked at the people and ordered them to say that they went against the empire. One of the knights approached his majesty and stretched a letter. This letter was found by one of the people. Dietrich looks a letter and writes it very much. Therefore, the emperor ordered to bring the heroine. As soon as the girl came, the man began to yell, "Let her say everything, and let it be true." As in general, it turned out that the secret that only the emperor and the heroine knew was in a letter from the people who wanted to present the empire. Only Ju Yeon does not know how such important information was in the letter. The letter was written that the emperor cries on the grave of her mother, the empress, every year on the day of his mother's death. It was a very important secret that only the heroine knew. The girl was always near her husband when he cried on his mother's grave. After that, the letter was immediately sent to the dungeon. The girl shouted and claimed that she was not guilty. She never told anyone the secret of the emperor. From that moment on the game, there were those characters with whom the heroine met after the prison. But only now, after the death of Attar and the mistakes Dietrich, the girl is not sure that the event with a letter in the game will pass as usual. Something had to change something. Even when the girl checked everything, she found nothing in the system. There is no information at all. Ju! Yeon looked at the system card in the system very carefully and noticed the church of which was not on the map before. Is this a new location in the game? At this time, as the girl looked at the church in the room, the maid also reported that the heroine should be reached because the guest came to her. Sudden Histum was the Duke. He apologizes that appeared so suddenly. Ju! Yeon claims that a man does not bring any problems, but that this is an important conversation with which the Duke wanted to ask. Only Fenrich says that the conversation is not so important. Today, in the backpack of Prince Attar, and his people return to the Tan Empire, so the death of the prince will be solved without any problems. Ju Yeon is interested in whether the man has learned who killed the prince. Only the Duke replies that she does not know who did it yet, but all the knights continue the investigation. So let the heroine do not take care of this. Fenrich came only to talk about Prince Attar. But if the Duke wants to know something else to know, the heroine has already told His Majesty. Only Fenrich drinks time and claims that it was all that he wanted to check that is enough. The Duke suddenly asks whether the tea of the heroine she liked for her husband. The girl is a little shocked with this question. Ju Yan was upset because of the cheap tea leaves, he probably is just very disgusting for the nobles. Only a man says that the smell of tea is just wonderful, and he likes the taste very much. The young lady is very surprised that the nobleman liked cheap tea. Fenrich looked at the girl and asked the lady not like flowers, because the man has long noticed in the room a vase without flowers. Probably the maid of the heroine is very bad for flowers, and the cleaning that leaves the vase empty. But only the girl first sees a vase in her room. The man reports that in a couple of days in their city there will be a large festival. Color flags will be raised. Many sellers from different countries will come, and the air will be filled with music and holiday. Therefore, the Duke is convinced that such a holiday should like the heroine. Ju Yeon thinks she didn't even know about the festival, but she was not surprised because the girl rarely left the tower. The heroine says that she would very much like to look at the holiday. Only can't. She is forbidden to leave the tower. Only Fenrich says it is a pity that the heroine lives by the rules, because if you do not destroy them, can simply destroy her life. At this time, Noi comes into the room and is very surprised. Lord notices a very good sculpture in the room. Noi looks at the sculpture and is surprised that she is so big and done very well. And carefully, there is no one who would like to give such an expensive gift. Then the man remembers the Duke. Is it a gift from a monster? Noi is amazed at the Duke, although low origin. But a man clearly has a taste for works of art. Also, Lord is surprised by the candle, which the Duke was laid near the sculpture. But as soon as the Lord lit a candle, the sculpture began to move. The next day, the girl says the maid that she wants to go outside, but the maid is very dissatisfied with the girl's behavior. Jo Yeon reports that she just wants to go to church. The girl thinks that the next event will start soon. This is her only chance. It is necessary to hurry and check whether there is a plot in the middle of the church. The maid screams that the heroine cannot leave the tower. If the heroine wants to leave the tower, must first ask for permission in His Majesty. Only the girl says that it is only a walk that will last for 10 minutes. Does the maid do not go to church for praying for the health of His Majesty? After such words, the maid thought or to go with the heroine, or let her go one. Now the maid thinks which option will bring her less problems. Ella asks if the girl goes to the church pray and quickly returns back. Then the maid will not mind. Jew! Yeon thinks that even if she is caught on, it is simply covered because she left the tower herself and did not tell anyone at all. The young lady asks for a maid brought to her room a vase for flowers. Only the maid says that the vase once brought in the past the heroine she does not remember. Then the girl says that she just forgot. After the words of the maid, the girl recalls that at the beginning of the plot, after she died dozens of times, and went through very cruel testing in the dungeon. The girl returned to the tower, after the dungeon all very injured. When the heroine came from the dungeon, she noticed a vase with flowers on the table, so she returned thousands of times when she returned hundreds of times in one tower. Therefore, the girl remembered a vase of flowers. She only found comfort after returning a dungeon. But the girl's thoughts were interrupted by the maid, because she must hurry to go to church to return to the tower before. Joo-yeon thinks that she probably in the game is just some kind of mistake, but just there is no game without single mistakes. As soon as the heroine approached the church, she noticed that there was no one near the building. The prayer has not yet begun. But it is good that there is no one near the building, because no one will see the heroine. But if the girl will not even notice that Dietrich can do. Joo-yeon went into the building and collided with a man, causing she to shout that she did not try to escape from the tower. The girl opened her eyes and noticed a stranger for herself a character. The man did not look like a priest. The heroine looked at the man for a long time and noticed that he could even argue with the emperor in his attractiveness. An unfamiliar man began to stretch his hand. The girl thought he wanted to help climb, but only a stranger just walked past the girl. The heroine was upset because a man would just break if it helps to rise a young lady. Also, Joo-yeon thinks if a stranger has already left church, can a character who is somehow related to the emperor? Jo! Yeon looked in the middle of the building and noticed that the sculptures in the middle of the church were all destroyed. The girl sees the destroyed sculptures and does not understand anyone who could do it at all. Ju! Yeon lifted a piece of sculpture and noticed that there were very strange inscriptions on the stone. After the heroine lifted a piece of sculpture, the system turned on and reported that it was stones from the Ataloy castle, from the sculpture of the church. Only more information was not more information. Mistakes began to emerge. The destruction of sculptures caused mistakes. But why intentionally destroy so much sculptures? At this time, as a girl kept a piece of stones from sculpture, a priest came to the church and began to shout. What the heroine made all the sculptures that were in the church were priest. Only after the shout of the priest did the girl realize that the sculptures will blame her in the destruction of the sculptures. After a couple of minutes, the girl sits opposite the priest and explains to him that she did not destroy the sculpture. This is the first time when she came to church at all, so she has no reason to do so cruelly. Then the man states that the girl claims that someone penetrated the church for the sake of destruction, but when the priest went into the church, he noticed only Joo-yeon. Only the girl reports that when she just entered the building, she noticed that a strange man came out of the church. The priest was also surprised when he heard of a stranger. The girl did not know what he was for a man, but his clothes looked like a priest's clothes. Also, the heroine did not notice the weapon with her husband, and the man had blonde hair and blue eyes. The priest once again asks that blonde hair and blue eyes. Let the girl swear that she now tells the priest all the truth. If everything that the girl is told is true, then the priest will ask the Imperial Knights to begin to search for a person who will be accused of destruction. Yeon looks at one of the sculptures, and it is interesting that it was a sculpture. The man says if there was no history lessons in the heroine, then she may not know what the sculpture is. The sculpture looks at the girl. This sculpture reflects one scene in mythology. The scene was called Ataloy. At the very beginning, a damned creature lived in the West. There are always epidemics, curses, and many deaths after the cursed creature. For many years, humanity has been fighting to get rid of the damned creature. In the process of thousands of wars, thousands of even hundreds of thousands of knights simply died. But at one time, the hero appeared. He made the damned creature to silence forever. Although it all happened long before the sculpture is created, Every resident of Ataloy is very respectful of a true hero, in honor of which the festival is held every year. Ju-yeon is wondering that it was at all for a damn creature. The priest claims that it was Maven for some unknown reason he was nicknamed Maven. After the priest's story, Ella's maid came to the church to safely bring the heroine back to the tower. Only the face of the maid was very strange. Ella looked at the girl and reported that very suddenly, His Majesty became bad. From such news, the girl was severely shocked. She asked the maid why the emperor was bad. Only Ella replies that he began to despair in the morning, that his head hurts, and then suddenly lost consciousness. Yeon thinks that Dietrich has never been ill before, whether the emperor's memories are returning what happens to this game in general. Therefore, instead of His Majesty, the Duke of Fenrich was brought to the heroine. The girl was surprised when she saw that the Duke came. The man is very happy to see the heroine again. The maid told him that now the girl is in the church, so he came. The man began to talk to the priest. If it is even an investigation into the destroyed statues, does not seem to the priest that he holds the heroine in the building for too long. Only the man does not know what the Duke is talking about. The priest just wanted to listen to what happened. Enric began to claim that after the girl entered church, the priest immediately noticed her near the destruction. If we would not better ask the question to the knights who were at the entrance and not the priest himself. The Duke also says that it is impossible to simply question a person who is not guilty of anything. And maybe the priest began to interrogate the girl just because she was Ju-yeon, and the priest knew that he would not. From such words, the Duke of the heroine was very pleasantly surprised. After that, the man asked the maid to finish the investigation, and at the time, the man conducts the heroine to his room. On the way to the tower, the girl began to tell everything she saw. Also, a young lady does not believe that it could happen on the day when she first decided to go to church. It could not just be a sudden coincidence. Due to the conversation, the Duke thought very much, but asked the girl to continue to tell everything he knew. Yeon thinks she talked a lot, but in the last time she did not have the opportunity to talk freely, so she didn't even notice how she started talking a lot. Lady looks at the Duke and thinks that the man began to defend the heroine for a long time. The girl seems to be more noble than she thought from the beginning. Also, the heroine decides to thank the Duke. Only a man does not even guess why the girl thanks him at all. Jan struck her hands and began to say that people just laughing at the young lady because she just left the title of princess in the imperial castle. Therefore, the Duke became the first person to be well cited. After such words, the man states that he appeared that the heroine was comfortable with him. Because when a man only saw the heroine recently, she was very nervous that she could not even meet her husband. From such words to the girl again became uncomfortable for a minute. Fenrich is very joyful that the heroine has become comfortable, so she may not worry next to him, because the girl is not to blame for the destruction of sculptures. Even if His Majesty learns, the Duke promises that there will be no problems. Yeon thinks whether it can really be worried, because Dietrich cannot miss something suspicious. But if you leave the situation with the destruction of sculptures, His Majesty can think that the heroine with someone in the contract. Fenrich noticed that the girl was very thinking, so if the heroine does not believe the words of the Duke, they can conclude a contract. Yeon was surprised when she heard about the contract. If the destruction of the sculptures comes some problem, then the Duke loses. But if everything will be well lost in this case, the losing one will have to fulfill the desire of the winner. Only Ju-yeon is worried, because she may not grab the opportunity to fulfill the desire of the Duke. Only a man stated that he would think about it when it all end well. The heroine knows that she will soon go on another road when a new event begins, so she will lose all the connections in Dietrich and the characters who surround him. But after her reflection, the girl agrees to the treaty. The Duke of such a very pleased, so that the heroine should remember that they have signed the contract, even if it is in words. After a couple of minutes, Ju-yeon was in the tower. The girl looked at the Duke. Ju-yeon knew that as soon as a new event, she would never see Duke Fenrich again. After the man brought the girl to the tower, he said goodbye because he needed to know the details in the maid. The girl remembers how she said goodbye to her husband and thinks that she saw him at the last time, but why she was so sad in her soul. The Duke of Fenrich was the only person who behaved well with the heroine. At this time, Dietrich dreamed of as he was mocking the heroine, and as he killed her. Only in the thoughts the emperor did not do it. He would never do that. From such nightmares, the emperor woke up. This is not the first time when he dreams of such dreams. From that day, the emperor dreams of nightmares, every day of God. Dreams of dreams where a man kills the heroine every time, again and again. Once a man was sure that he did not do it, but now his confidence disappears. Is it really a real desire to Dietrich somewhere in the middle of him? The emperor recalls how the heroine shouted in a dungeon that she never betrayed the emperor, even in her childhood never, did not tell him his secrets. Suddenly, a knight comes into the room. He is surprised because His Majesty sleeps all day long. It is necessary to call a doctor immediately. Only the emperor asks not to do so, important more recently. Then the knight says that today there was a problem in the backpack, so the knight came to tell. The man was surprised by such news. The knight begins to tell that today a person has penetrated into the church, which began to destroy all the sculptures. Also then, the man says that the first who was at the crime scene became the heroine, was shocked from such an emperor. Dietrich began to ask again whether the knight was wrong with the girl was in the morning in the church. Then the knight claims that, so the girl went to pray for His Majesty's health and became the first witness to destruction. Then the emperor thought the heroine was somehow connected to the man who made the destruction. Only the knight replied that it is unlikely that the girl is somehow connected to the destruction because there is no evidence. Dietrich thought was the heroine again preparing to escape how it was once as a child. The destroyed statue in the church was all done to make a real chaos. Probably His Majesty's dreams began to seem true. The knight also reports that His Majesty came a letter. A man surprised that someone sent a letter to him. The knight also states that the letter has already been checked, so it is not threatened. There are no curses, and the letter does not show who sent it. It was only when His Majesty took the letter in the hands of, he was shocked by the content that was written there. At this time, a maid entered the heroine's room and reported that His Majesty asked the girl to appear. The heroine, with a cold look, has already realized that the next event began. Ju Yeon stands before the emperor. The man began to say that he always underestimated the heroine. Even when the girl was sitting in the tower, she was able to find a way and plot with other people. The girl stands, and it listens to it, but only without a system, without answering. She does not even know what to answer. Though the girl does not expect that His Majesty will believe her, it is possible to talk to Dietrich for the first time in the first time. Ju Yeon is silent and thinks of doing it next, but the emperor screams that the girl answers his question. Then the heroine says that she never spoke the secrets of the emperor to other people, even with no one entered into a contract. Also, the girl shouts that all that is written in the letter is just a lie. So now the heroine says all the truth of His Majesty. Ju Yeon can't even go out, but the only people she can talk to is a couple of maids in the tower. As in general, the girl could betray the emperor, and why only His Majesty does not understand her. Only Dietrich squeezes his hand and affirms he must believe in the words of the heroine. The conversation was interrupted by the Duke that suddenly appeared. Also with the Duke came together a maid who was very afraid to appear before his grandeur. The girl was surprised to see Fenrich, and even more surprised when she saw Ella. Only His Majesty said that the Duke of this case does not touch, so it is not necessary to interfere. But the man states that he brought a real criminal who agreed with the traitors. Ju Yeon and Dearth were just shocked when such words were heard from the Duke. When a man was looking for traces in the church, he decided to check the things of the maid and found a very interesting letter in things. The letter was written in a cipher. The letter was similar to the fact that the maid has long been communicating with the traitors of the empire. The statement of a woman that she was always a faithful maid of the heroine. It was only to cover and receive information from a person who was closest to His Majesty. Dietrich yells that this is all a stupid conversation such as simply impossible. But the cries of the emperor interrupt the Duke and reports that Noid Vern is dead. The man also says that Lord was found dead in the house, like the fact that a wild beast attacked Lord. Since Lord had no close friends, the investigation was too long, but all so coincided that almost all Lord's servants were on vacation, and the man's body was found too late. Only the emperor does not believe in the words of the Duke, because the wild beast in the center of the capital, as such, is possible. But Fenrich states that it is impossible in the imperial castle of a foreign prince, and a nobleman in the capital simply tore a beast. It cannot be a simple coincidence. Of course, the emperor heard all this, that lady saw a very suspicious man in the church. It is not surprising that the same person is at the center of all strange events, but it was already proved that the faithful maid of the heroine was in the contract with the traitors. Then Dirth asked what the Duke was clothed. The man is convinced that the heroine has become a target for the future murder. Because earlier, the girl miraculously avoided difficult situations, but now there are no guarantees that it will be the same way. Fenrich proposes for the safety of Juyeon to temporarily take it out of the lock. Only the emperor is against such a decision. If it is all true, then the man had even more reason to keep the girl in the castle, because the imperial castle is the most safe place in Adaloy. But only the first serious case arose in the castle itself. As far as everyone knows, the offender can safely walk in the imperial castle. Until the truth, it is better to hide outside the castle and return when it is calm. Only the emperor still states that the heroine cannot go to the imperial castle, the safe place for her. Only Dietrich thinks that he is also in the castle now. He can be sure that the castle is really safe. But why he now wants to protect the heroine, a couple of minutes ago he had to punish her cruelly for betrayal. Memories began to emerge in the man's head as he ordered the girl to be taken to a dungeon. But the memories of the emperor interrupt the Duke, because he has a safe place outside the capital of which no one knows. So the heroine can stay there until everything is decided. The man also swore allegiance to the emperor even before Dietrich went to the throne, so the man can trust his Duke. Dietrich recalls that the Duke was indeed his best ally, even to the throne. In fact, the man deserves the most trust. But if rumors begin to talk dirty things about the heroine, the type she is cursed because she lives in the tower all his life, and that this girl has destroyed sculptures in the church, if the girl's name is in people, they will say that the heroine of the witch who ruled the emperor. It will happen, so the people will be very cruel to the girl. If this happens, then it will be impossible to solve the problem calmly. The emperor turned to the heroine that she wants at all. Does the girl really want to leave the castle? Yeon thinks if she leaves the castle, that then happens to the game. If she leaves the tower anymore, can no longer use the system. There is no information outside the castle. The heroine does not know what can happen if she leaves the castle. If she really becomes the target of the murder, then he will not be able to answer then. But how not to look at the risk too high? But still, there is only one reason for which the girl really wants to leave the castle. Yeon answers the emperor's questions and says she just wants to live, so it will come, as the Duke will say. While the danger will interfere with the girl, she asks for His Majesty to release the heroine outside the castle and the capital. After such words, Dietrich turns to his ally. Let Fenrich spend the girl beyond the castle. From this answer, the heroine was just shocked. The emperor also orders to grasp the maid and throw in the dungeon. Let her tell you how she is connected with the traitors. As soon as the girl left the castle, Dietrich asked if he did not want to tell him the heroine. Only Juyeon did not immediately understand what a man wanted. Dietrich asks as he didn't understand the girl all the time. The heroine thinks he needs to outline all his guilt and distrust now. Then the girl decides that she has nothing to say, His Majesty, so she will leave the castle better. After a couple of minutes, the girl already goes in a carriage and is surprised by the world outside the castle. The heroine likes to see good street food, listen to music playing on the street, the smell of beautiful flowers. But most importantly, a girl now does not have to experience all the horrific events that waited for her. When the Duke noticed how Juyeon enjoyed the trip, ordered to go so slowly as soon as possible, Fenrich and Juyeon came to the man's house. He hopes that the girl will not upset his little house. But as soon as the heroine saw the house, she was shocked, because the Duke's house looks as if it were the greatest place in their kingdom.